They called her Butterfly, mocking the F-16 pilot who looked too delicate for combat. When her squadron mates failed a critical mission, leaving Army Rangers trapped in hostile territory, the tower's call changed everything. Viper 6, you're cleared for launch. Sometimes the deadliest predators hide behind the gentlest names. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Look who's here early, Captain Rick Blade Morrison announced, his voice carrying across the room with practiced cruelty. Our little butterfly fluttering around the squadron like she owns the place. The nickname had stuck since flight training. Not because Jessica was delicate or pretty, though at 5'4" with features that betrayed her Chinese heritage, she'd certainly heard both assumptions. No, some instructor at Columbus Air Force Base had watched her perform a particularly graceful aileron roll during formation training and declared she floated through the sky like a butterfly. The name followed her through advanced fighter training, through survival school, and now into her operational squadron at Shaw Air Force Base. Lieutenant Danny Torch, Williams snorted into his coffee. I still can't believe they gave her an F-16. Should have stuck her in a cargo plane where the pretty girls belong. Maybe she can paint little flowers on her missiles, added Captain Steve Hammer Rodriguez, earning chuckles from the group. Make them match her delicate sensibilities. Jessica kept her eyes on her mission folder, forcing herself to review target coordinates she'd already memorized 3 times. The folder contained details for Operation Desert Shield training exercises, mock combat scenarios designed to prepare pilots for potential deployments to hostile environments. Today's mission was air-to-ground strikes against simulated enemy positions in the Nevada desert. I heard her daddy pulled strings to get her into fighters, Morrison continued, lowering his voice just enough to seem conspiratorial while ensuring Jessica could hear every word. Some connections in the Pentagon. That's how someone who belongs in a kitchen ends up pretending to be a warrior. The assumption stung because it was completely fabricated. Jessica's father was a professor of mechanical engineering at Ohio State University. Her mother taught elementary school. Neither had any military connections whatsoever. Jessica had earned her spot through the same brutal selection process as every other pilot in the room, except she'd done it while enduring commentary about her gender at every step. Captain Lisa Phoenix Martinez, one of only 2 other women in the squadron, caught Jessica's eye and offered a subtle nod of solidarity. But she didn't speak up. In a world where showing weakness could be fatal, defending someone else was often viewed as weakness by association. The ready room door slammed open, and Major Robert Sledge Thompson strode in with the kind of purposeful movement that made grown pilots straighten unconsciously. At 42, Thompson had logged combat hours over Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria. His flight suit displayed ribbons that told stories of missions most people would never hear about. When Sledge spoke, people listened. All right, ladies and gentlemen, he announced, his voice cutting through the morning chatter like a blade through silk. Today's exercise is going to test everything you think you know about close air support. He activated the wall-mounted display screen, revealing a detailed map of the Nellis Range Complex in Nevada. Red symbols marked simulated enemy positions scattered across mountainous terrain. Blue arrows indicated friendly ground forces requesting air support. The scenario is this, Thompson continued. Army Rangers are pinned down in a valley by enemy forces positioned on ridgelines. They need immediate close air support to break contact and evacuate wounded personnel. The catch is this, the enemy has mobile surface-to-air missiles. They're actively hunting our aircraft. Jessica studied the tactical display with the kind of focused attention that had carried her through every training program the Air Force had thrown at her. The terrain was challenging, steep mountains that would limit maneuvering options, narrow valleys that could become death traps if an aircraft lost power or took battle damage. Flight assignments, Thompson announced, consulting his clipboard. Morrison, you're leading Alpha Flight. Williams and Rodriguez on your wing. Martinez, you've got Bravo Flight with Jackson and Cooper. He paused, his eyes finding Jessica in the back row. Chin, you're flying single ship for this exercise. Call sign Viper 6. You'll be providing backup support and battle damage assessment. The room went silent. Single ship missions were usually reserved for the squadron's most experienced pilots, aviators who had proven they could handle complex tactical situations without the safety net of wingmen. It was either a sign of supreme confidence or a way to isolate someone who might not measure up. Morrison's eyebrows shot up. Sir, are you sure about that? Butterfly's never flown single ship in a combat exercise. The call sign is Viper 6, Thompson replied, his tone carrying the kind of authority that ended discussions. And yes, I'm sure. Chin has the highest bombing accuracy scores in the squadron and the best situational awareness ratings. If anyone can handle a solo mission in this environment, it's her. Jessica felt a flush of pride mixed with terror. Viper 6. It wasn't her official call sign, that honor still belonged to Butterfly. But for this mission she would be Viper 6. The designation carried weight, responsibility, and the kind of respect she'd been chasing for 2 years. After the briefing, as pilots dispersed to their aircraft, Morrison cornered Jessica near the squadron operations desk. "Listen, Butterfly," he said, his voice dropping to a mock-serious whisper. "Don't get yourself killed out there trying to prove something. We need our mechanics to have steady hands." The comment was designed to remind her that many of her squadron mates still viewed her as an affirmative action pilot, someone who'd taken a spot that rightfully belonged to a man. Jessica had heard variations of this theme dozens of times. The suggestion that she was somehow less qualified, less capable, less deserving of wearing the same wings as her male counterparts. "I'll try to keep up," she replied evenly, refusing to take the bait. Williams joined Morrison at the ops desk. "Maybe we should pool our money and bet on how long it takes her to call for help." "I'm thinking 10 minutes after first contact," Rodriguez added. "As soon as she hears actual gunfire, she'll be begging for backup." Jessica walked away without responding. She'd learned that engaging with their commentary only provided more ammunition for future attacks. Better to let her flying do the talking. The walk to her aircraft was a journey through controlled chaos. Ground crews swarmed over F-16s like mechanical insects, loading weapons, checking systems, and preparing millions of dollars worth of military hardware for combat operations. The smell of jet fuel mixed with hydraulic fluid and hot metal created an industrial perfume that clung to everything on the flight line. Jessica's aircraft, tail number 85 to 1547, sat in the morning sun like a predator at rest. The F-16 Fighting Falcon was 38 feet of sleek engineering designed for one purpose: air-to-air and air-to-ground combat. Its single Pratt & Whitney engine could push the aircraft past Mach 2. Its radar could track multiple targets simultaneously. Its weapon systems could deliver precision strikes against ground targets or engage enemy fighters in aerial combat. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos, Jessica's dedicated crew chief, stood beside the aircraft with a clipboard and the kind of protective pride that came from knowing every rivet and wire in the machine. "She's ready to go, ma'am," Santos reported. "Fuel load is full, weapon systems checked, avionics are green across the board." Jessica walked around the aircraft, conducting her own pre-flight inspection. She checked the engine intake for foreign objects, examined the landing gear for leaks or damage, and verified that all external weapons were properly mounted. The ritual was part practical necessity and part superstition. Every pilot had their own way of connecting with their machine before flight. "Santos," Jessica said, pausing beside the crew chief. "Thanks for taking care of her." "Always, Lieutenant. You bring her home in one piece and I'll have her ready for the next mission." The cockpit of an F-16 was designed for efficiency, not comfort. Every switch, button, and display served a specific purpose in the complex dance of modern air combat. Jessica strapped herself into the Martin Baker ejection seat, connecting oxygen, communications, and G-suit systems. The process was automatic after hundreds of training flights, but she never rushed it. Shortcuts in aviation had a tendency to become deadly mistakes. Engine start was a precisely choreographed sequence. Jet fuel starter engaged, engine rotating, fuel flow established, ignition, and then the growling whine as the Pratt & Whitney came to life behind her. The aircraft seemed to wake up around her, systems energizing, displays illuminating, the machine transforming from static display to living weapon. "Shaw Tower, this is Viper 6 requesting taxi clearance," Jessica called into her radio. "Viper 6, Shaw Tower. You're cleared to taxi runway 05. Winds 040 at 8 knots. Altimeter 299er2. As she taxied toward the runway, Jessica could see other aircraft from her squadron preparing for departure. Morrison's Alpha flight was already airborne, their aircraft visible as distant specks climbing toward the exercise area. Martinez's Bravo flight was next in sequence, their engines spooling up for takeoff. At the runway threshold, Jessica completed her final checks. Control surfaces moving freely, engine parameters normal, weapon systems armed but safe, navigation systems aligned with GPS coordinates. Everything looked perfect, but in combat aviation, perfection was the minimum standard for survival. "Shaw Tower, Viper 6 ready for departure. Viper 6, you're cleared for takeoff. Wind 045 at 10 knots. Contact departure on 254.7. Jessica pushed the throttle forward, feeling 29,000 pounds of thrust press her back into her seat. The F-16 accelerated down the runway like a caged animal suddenly released, the landscape blurring past her canopy as airspeed climbed through rotation speed. At 150 knots, she pulled back on the stick and felt the aircraft lift off the ground, transforming from earthbound machine to aerial predator. The climb to altitude gave her time to think about the mission ahead. Single-ship operations required a different mindset than formation flying. No wingman to watch for threats, no element leader to provide backup, no safety net beyond her own skills and decision-making. It was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. At 15,000 feet, she leveled off and checked in with the exercise controllers. Nightwatch control, this is Viper 6 entering the exercise area. Viper 6, Nightwatch control. Be advised, Alpha and Bravo flights are already engaged with simulated enemy forces. Ground Commander is requesting immediate close air support in Grid Square 77 Charlie. Jessica consulted her mission map. Grid Square 77 Charlie was in the heart of the mountain range, exactly where Thompson had predicted the most challenging tactical situations would develop. If the other flights were already engaged, it meant the exercise was proceeding faster than anticipated. Nightwatch control, Viper 6 copies. Proceeding to 77 Charlie for close air support. She banked the F-16 toward the mountains, pushing the throttle forward to military power. The aircraft responded instantly, accelerating through the thin desert air toward the simulated combat zone. Below her, the Nevada landscape stretched out in shades of brown and tan, broken by mountain ranges that cast sharp shadows in the morning sun. The radio crackled with combat chatter from the other flights. Alpha 2, you've got SAM sights at your 11 o'clock. Bravo 1 brake left. Missile inbound. I'm hit. Simulated engine failure, requesting recovery instructions. Jessica listened to the chaos with a growing sense of unease. The exercise scenario was proving more challenging than anyone had anticipated. Multiple aircraft were reporting battle damage or weapons failures. The simulated enemy forces were more numerous and better positioned than the intelligence briefing had suggested. As she approached the target area, her radar warning receiver began to chirp with threat indications. Simulated surface-to-air missiles were tracking her aircraft, their electronic signatures painting her with targeting radars. The exercise might be training, but the stress responses were entirely real. Ground control, this is Viper 6 approaching 77 Charlie. Request target update and threat assessment. Viper 6, ground control. We've got Rangers pinned down in the valley floor. Enemy positions on the ridgelines at your 2 o'clock and 10 o'clock. Be advised, mobile SAM sites are active in the area. Alpha and Bravo flights have taken heavy simulated casualties. Jessica crested a ridgeline and saw the tactical situation spread out below her. The valley floor was marked with smoke grenades indicating the positions of friendly ground forces. Red smoke on the surrounding ridgelines marked simulated enemy positions. It was a textbook ambush scenario, ground forces caught in a crossfire with limited cover and no easy escape route. But something was wrong with the tactical picture. The enemy positions were too well coordinated, too professionally executed. This wasn't the work of exercise controllers running a routine training scenario. Someone had put serious thought into creating a tactical problem that would challenge even experienced combat pilots. Her radar warning receiver increased its chirping tempo. Multiple threat radars were now tracking her aircraft, simulating the kind of dense air defense environment that existed in real combat zones. If this were actual combat, she would already be defending against multiple missile launches. Viper 6, this is Alpha 1. Morrison's voice crackled over the radio, stress evident in his tone. We've expended all ordnance and taken simulated battle damage. Bravo flight is in the same situation. You're the only remaining close air support asset in the area. The weight of responsibility settled on Jessica's shoulders like lead blankets. 12 Army Rangers were counting on her to provide the air support they needed to break contact and evacuate their wounded. Her squadron mates had tried and failed. Now it was up to the pilot they called Butterfly to accomplish what their combined efforts had not. She studied the tactical situation with the kind of analytical precision that had carried her through every challenging training program the Air Force had offered. The enemy positions were well concealed and mutually supporting. A direct attack would likely result in her aircraft being shot down before she could deliver effective ordnance. But there was another option. The valley had a narrow exit to the southeast, a ravine that wound between two mountain peaks. If she could suppress the enemy positions long enough for the ground forces to move toward that exit, they might be able to break contact and reach safer terrain. But it would require her to fly directly through the engagement zone, accepting maximum risk to provide maximum effect for the friendlies below. Ground control, this is Viper 6. I'm going to make a single pass through the valley north to south. Have your people ready to move when I call Winchester. That means I've expended all ordnance. Viper 6, ground control copies. Rangers are ready to move on your signal. Jessica rolled the F-16 into a steep diving turn, pointing the nose toward the valley floor. Her airspeed climbed through 400 knots as she descended toward the deck, using terrain masking to avoid the simulated SAM sites until the last possible moment. At 500 feet above ground level, she pulled out of the dive and began her attack run. The heads-up display showed multiple ground targets, her aircraft's computer automatically prioritizing threats based on their danger to friendly forces. Her thumb found the weapon release button on the control stick. Viper 6 and hot, she called, announcing her attack run to everyone monitoring the frequency. The simulated weapons release sequence was exactly like the real thing, except instead of actual explosions, exercise controllers would evaluate her accuracy and determine the effectiveness of each attack. She pickled off ordnance against the first set of enemy positions, then immediately jinked left to avoid simulated return fire. Her radar warning receiver was screaming now, indicating multiple SAM launches. In real combat, she would be executing defensive maneuvers, deploying chaff and flares, doing everything possible to avoid incoming missiles. But this was training, so she maintained her attack heading and engaged the next set of targets. Direct hit on the ridgeline positions. Ground control reported. Enemy fire is suppressed on the eastern side of the valley. Jessica continued her attack run, engaging targets of opportunity while her aircraft's computer tracked simulated battle damage. The exercise controllers were painting a realistic picture of combat stress, systems failures, weapons malfunctions, and the constant threat of being shot down. Viper 6, Winchester, she called, indicating she had expended all ordnance. Ground forces are cleared to move southeast toward the ravine exit. Ground control copies, Rangers are moving. As Jessica pulled up from her attack run, climbing back towards safer altitude, she could hear the excitement in the ground controller's voice. The simulated Rangers were successfully breaking contact, using the suppression she had provided to reach the safety of the southeastern ravine. Viper 6, this is ground control. The voice on the radio was filled with professional admiration. Outstanding work. You've successfully completed the close air support mission. Rangers are clear of the engagement area with minimal casualties. Jessica leveled off at 10,000 feet, her hands still shaking slightly from the adrenaline of the simulated combat run. She had done it, accomplished the mission that had challenged 2 full flights of experienced pilots. The pilot they called Butterfly had proven she could fly and fight as effectively as any aviator in the squadron. All aircraft, came the voice of the exercise controller. Exercise terminated. All simulated casualties returned to base for debrief. Outstanding work by all participants. As Jessica turned toward Shaw Air Force Base, she allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The morning that had started with mockery and doubt was ending with mission success. She had proven something to herself and, more importantly, to the squadron mates who questioned her qualifications. The landing pattern at Shaw was busy with aircraft returning from the exercise. Jessica joined the formation, her F-16 taking its place among the other fighters as they prepared to return to Earth. The ritual of landing was as precisely choreographed as takeoff airspeeds, altitudes, and spacing, all calculated to ensure safe recovery of millions of dollars worth of military hardware. Shaw Tower, Viper 6 requesting landing clearance. Viper 6, Shaw Tower. You're number 3 in the pattern behind 2 other F-16s. Runway 05 is active, wind 040 at 12 knots. As she turned onto final approach, Jessica could see ground crews already preparing for aircraft recovery. The same mechanics and technicians who had prepared her aircraft for combat were now ready to service it for the next mission. The cycle of military aviation continued: preparation, execution, recovery, and preparation again. The touchdown was smooth, her F-16's main landing gear touching down precisely on the runway centerline. She deployed the drag chute and applied wheel brakes, feeling the aircraft decelerate from landing speed to taxi speed. The mission was officially complete. Taxiing back to the flight line, Jessica could see her squadron mates already climbing out of their aircraft. Some were engaged in animated conversations with their crew chiefs, describing the challenges of the exercise. Others stood in small groups, debriefing the mission while maintenance crews swarmed over their jets. She parked in her assigned spot and began the shutdown sequence. Engine to idle, then off. Electrical systems secured. Ejection seat safed. The F-16 gradually transformed from living machine back to static display, waiting for its next mission. Staff Sergeant Santos was waiting beside the aircraft as Jessica climbed down from the cockpit. How'd she perform, Lieutenant? Like a dream, Santos. No discrepancies to report. As Jessica walked toward the squadron building, she noticed Morrison, Williams, and Rodriguez huddled near the operations desk. Their conversation stopped as she approached, replaced by the kind of awkward silence that suggested they had been discussing her performance. "Hell of a mission, Butterfly," Morrison said, though his tone suggested he was still processing what had happened. "Ground control was pretty impressed with your attack run." "Thanks," Jessica replied, unsure whether the comment was genuine praise or another setup for humiliation. Williams cleared his throat. "Listen, about this morning, maybe we were a little rough on you." It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was closer than Jessica had expected. The morning's exercise had apparently provided some perspective on her capabilities as a combat pilot. Major Thompson emerged from the squadron commander's office, his flight suit still showing the sweat stains from his own mission. "Chin, I need to see you in my office." Jessica followed Thompson into his office, wondering if she was about to be congratulated or criticized. In military aviation, exceptional performance could sometimes be viewed as dangerous showboating, especially if it made other pilots look bad by comparison. Thompson closed the door and gestured for Jessica to take a seat. His office was decorated with the accumulated memorabilia of a career fighter pilot, patches from various squadrons, photographs from deployments, and awards recognizing exceptional performance in combat and training. "That was quite a performance out there," Thompson said, settling behind his desk. "The exercise controllers are calling it one of the most effective single-ship close air support missions they've ever observed." Jessica felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. Praise from Thompson was valuable, but she had learned to be cautious about celebrating success too early. "Sir, I was just doing my job." Thompson smiled. "No, Chin, you were doing considerably more than your job. You solved a tactical problem that had defeated 2 flights of experienced pilots. You demonstrated the kind of situational awareness and decision-making that we hope to see from our most senior aviators." He leaned forward, his expression becoming more serious. "I'm recommending you for upgrade training to flight lead. And I'm putting you in for a commendation medal for your performance during today's exercise." The words hit Jessica like a physical blow. Flight lead upgrade meant she would be qualified to lead formations of fighter aircraft in combat operations. It was a responsibility typically reserved for captains with years of operational experience. For a lieutenant with less than 2 years in the squadron, it was an extraordinary opportunity. "Sir, thank you. I won't let you down." "I don't think you will," Thompson replied. "But I want you to understand something. This squadron has a culture problem. Some of our pilots have allowed personal biases to interfere with their professional judgment. Today's exercise demonstrated that talent comes in many forms, and we can't afford to waste any of it." As Jessica left Thompson's office, she found the squadron-ready room unusually quiet. Word of her performance had apparently spread through the fighter pilot network with the speed that only military gossip could achieve. Pilots who had been mocking her call sign that morning were now viewing her with something approaching professional respect. Martinez approached her near the coffee machine. "Outstanding work out there, Jessica. That was some of the best single-ship CS I've ever seen." "Thanks, Lisa. Just glad I could help out the Rangers." "Listen," Martinez said, lowering her voice, "I know this squadron hasn't always been easy for you, but what you did today changed some minds. Thompson's already talking about fast-tracking you for weapons school." Weapons School, the Air Force's graduate-level program for fighter pilots. The most challenging tactical training the service offered, designed to produce the experts who would teach the next generation of combat aviators. It was the kind of opportunity that could define a military career. As the afternoon wore on, the dynamic in the squadron began to shift in subtle but noticeable ways. Pilots who had previously ignored Jessica began including her in their conversations. Technical discussions about tactics and weapons employment started to include her input as a matter of course rather than polite obligation. The transformation wasn't complete, institutional biases didn't disappear overnight. But the morning's exercise had established Jessica as something more than an affirmative action pilot who happened to be taking up space in a fighter cockpit. She had proven herself as a combat aviator capable of performing under pressure and delivering results when the mission demanded excellence. Later that evening, as Jessica was completing her post-flight paperwork, Morrison appeared at her desk. The swagger that had characterized his morning performance was gone, replaced by something that looked like genuine respect. "Chin," he said, his voice lacking its usual mocking tone. "I owe you an apology. What I said this morning was unprofessional and unfair." Jessica looked up from her paperwork, surprised by the directness of the statement. "We've all heard about your performance today," Morrison continued. "Ground control couldn't stop talking about your attack run. They said it was textbook close air support executed under the most challenging conditions they'd ever simulated." He paused, seeming to struggle with words that didn't come naturally. "I was wrong about you. We were wrong about you. You're not here because of politics or quotas or anything else. You're here because you're a damn good pilot." It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was honest and sincere. Jessica could see the effort it had required for Morrison to acknowledge his mistake. "Thanks, Rick. I appreciate that." As Morrison walked away, Jessica returned to her paperwork with a sense of satisfaction that went deeper than mission success. She had proven something important not just to her squadron mates, but to herself. The pilot they had called Butterfly was capable of flying and fighting with the best aviators the Air Force could produce. The nickname would probably stick. Military call signs had a way of becoming permanent regardless of their original context. But after today, when people heard Butterfly, they would think of precision flying and tactical excellence rather than perceived weakness or feminine delicacy. Outside the squadron building, the flight line was preparing for the next day's operations. Ground crews worked under floodlights, servicing aircraft and loading weapons for tomorrow's training missions. The cycle of military aviation continued: preparation, execution, recovery, and preparation again. Jessica gathered her flight gear and headed toward her car, thinking about the day's events. When she had walked into the ready room that morning, she had been just another lieutenant trying to prove herself worthy of wearing fighter pilot wings. Now she was a flight lead candidate with a recommendation for weapons school, one of the elite aviators who would shape the future of air combat tactics. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. It was the result of hundreds of training flights, thousands of hours of study, and the kind of dedicated preparation that most people never witnessed. But today had been the day when all that preparation came together in a single mission that changed everything. As she drove home through the South Carolina countryside, Jessica allowed herself to think about the future. Flight lead upgrade, weapons school, and eventually perhaps squadron command opportunities that had seemed impossible when she first heard pilots mocking her call sign were now within reach. The radio in her car was playing classic rock, and she found herself humming along with a song about taking chances and proving doubters wrong. It seemed appropriate for a day that had started with mockery and ended with respect earned through performance under pressure. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new training missions, and new opportunities to prove herself as a combat aviator. But tonight, Lieutenant Jessica Butterfly Chen could take satisfaction in knowing that when the mission demanded excellence, she had delivered exactly what was required. The pilot they had mocked as Butterfly had proven she could fly and fight as Viper 6, and that made all the difference in the world where it mattered most. In the cockpit, under pressure, when lives depended on getting the mission right. In the fighter pilot community, respect was earned through performance, not granted through politics or sympathy. Jessica had earned her respect the hard way, by proving she belonged in the cockpit through superior skill, tactical awareness, and the courage to accept maximum risk when the mission demanded it. And when the tower cleared, Viper 6, your go for launch, everyone who heard it would know they were listening to one of the Air Force's finest fighter pilots taking off for another successful mission.